following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Jim Michaely, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from current issues of the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. From the first page, this is an article titled, Niagara Falls Ready for Busy New Year's Eve. Despite another year with no outdoor concert, tourist area expected to be packed. Niagara Falls tourism operators are preparing for what's expected to be another busy New Year's Eve. Despite there not being a concert in Queen Victoria Park for a sixth year, thousands of people are still expected to ring in the new year in the tourist district. We've already got road closure plans in place, and even though we haven't done a big event since 2019, prior to COVID, with Bryan Adams, Niagara Falls is still seen as one of those places you go to celebrate the new year, watch the fireworks over the falls, said Mayor Jim Diodati. It's just a nice getaway. Niagara Park's Chief Executive Officer Dave Adames said 2 fireworks shows over the falls are planned for the big night, at 8 p.m. and midnight. We do have a lot going on, day and night. During the day, all our year-round attractions are open, including our newest, Niagara Takes Flight. We do have extended hours for some of our attractions that day, he said. Our partners, both the Zip Line and Boat Tour, are operating that day as well. Table Rock House Restaurant is open for a couple of seatings for New Year's dinner, so it's the closest place you can have a romantic New Year's Eve dinner while watching the illuminated falls. Adames said the Winter Festival of Lights is a major driver for visitation on New Year's Eve and throughout winter. More information about New Year's Eve events in the parks can be found at Niagara Park's website. Niagara Falls Tourism President Janice Thompson said operators are well equipped to deliver a great New Year's Eve, adding there are various culinary offerings and entertainment options. On our website, there's a huge listing of everything going on for New Year's Eve, and there's a wide variety, so I know the operators are really plugged into it, even in the absence of a major concert, she said. Winter Festival of Lights this year is incredible, so there's still lots of reasons that people will definitely be there. In an emailed statement, Niagara Falls Tourism's Chantel Southons said New Year's Eve is, quote, gearing up to be very busy in the destination, unquote. Hotel bookings are up over last year, and we're seeing more events being promoted by hotels, restaurants, and bars in the tourism core, she said. Add to that the incredible Winter Festival of Lights, with the new addition of a laser light and sound show, and the 4th annual Hot Chocolate Trail, and both residents and visitors have a lot to explore, both indoors and out. The Laser Light and Sound Show takes place every half hour from 6:30 to 11:30 p.m. in Queen Victoria Park. Southern said the fireworks display is being elevated with a, quote, exciting binational celebration, end quote, at midnight, with fireworks on both sides of the international border. At the stroke of midnight, the sky will ignite for 9 breathtaking minutes, with fireworks launching from both sides of the falls, she said. Families can also enjoy a special bonus fireworks show at 8 p.m., perfect for kids and early celebrators. Here's a story titled, How Did Niagara Man's Bone Get to Hamilton? Year passes since remains of Nicholas Adamson discovered. A little more than a year ago, an upper arm bone was found in Hamilton Harbor. DNA from the remains was sent to the RCMP's National DNS Databank for identification. The testing determined the humerus bone, which was discovered on December 4, 2024, belonged to Nicholas Adamson, a St. Catharines man who went missing after spending an evening with friends and walking away from the Moose and Goose nightclub in Thorold in the early morning hours of March 17, 2022. Questions at the heart of the case have been nagging Adams' family Adamson's family since how did that lone arm bone make it to the Hamilton waterfront from Niagara, and how did police determine foul play was unlikely given the small portion of the remains discovered? Theories on how the arm got there include the idea that the 29-year-old Adamson got caught up in a ship's rudder and was carried to the harbor. Another posits he ended up in the waters of Lake Ontario or the Welland Canal and was somehow carried by water currents from Thorold to Hamilton. Another is he was physically transported by land, willing or unwilling, from Niagara to Hamilton. Adamson's upper arm bone was identified using DNA from his parents, Jennifer and Bill Adamson. Adamson's remains were discovered near a Hamilton and Oshawa Port Authority building in Hamilton Harbor, but police have declined to pinpoint the exact location as the investigation into his death continues. Volunteers led by not-for-profit Bring Me Home undertook their own ground search for further remains around the shoreline at the Hamilton Harbor Waterfront Trail in early September without result. Surveillance video from outside the bar presented to Jennifer Adamson by police showed her son interacting with other patrons, joking and laughing, before walking off along Sullivan Avenue toward Pine Street after being refused re-entry. Pine Street is west of the bar and in the opposite direction from the canal, although it's possible Adamson turned around. Lock 7 on the canal in Thorold is roughly a 12-minute walk at a regular pace, just under 1 kilometer from the Moose and Goose. Ashley Smith, a Toronto-based forensic anthropologist and consultant, said in her mind only 2 credible possibilities exist to explain how the arm bone got to Hamilton. One is if the remains themselves were attached to a boat, she said. Another is Adamson could have been taken by land to Hamilton Harbor. Those are the 2 strongest possibilities. Ted Phillips, a retired Ontario provincial police officer, said the likeliest possibility is transport by land. The 31-year search and rescue veteran said the possibility of Adamson's remains being attached to a ship's rudder and carried to Hamilton are not good. The idea that Adamson was killed and transported by land is much more likely. The odds of him being caught up in a ship are pretty slim, but there's that chance because it has happened before, he said. But if Adamson's disappearance certainly leads toward a more culpable homicide, like somebody's done something. Another theory Smith suggested involved currents in Lake Ontario transporting the remains, but she stressed it was a very unlikely scenario. The current is more difficult in Lake Ontario, she said, as it moves in a counterclockwise motion, going east from the mouth of the Welland Canal, not west toward Hamilton. But the idea cannot be entirely discounted, she said. Leon Bogman, a Queen's University professor of civil engineering who has studied the hydrodynamics of Lake Ontario for over 20 years, also said the water current theory is improbable based on modeling in Lake Ontario. There are scientific modelings showing the Niagara River, and by association the Welland Canal. When the water comes out, it hugs the southern shore and moves in a counterclockwise direction, he said. There is very little to no chance that remains could be transported from the Welland Canal to Hamilton Harbor by the current. Bogman said he would expect remains to be beached on the shoreline around the Rochester area in New York State. Even if something was traveling along the shore from east to west under easterly winds, it would have washed up on shore somewhere and not actually have gone in the harbor. Bogman said it would stand to reason the remains discovered in the harbor were not transported there by water. It's more likely if something was found in Hamilton Harbor, it was deposited there or moved there. It's very unlikely the water would have moved it in that direction. From a forensic standpoint, when determining a cause of death with limited remains, it is difficult to provide a fulsome picture, as coroners are required to answer a list of questions that govern their conclusions, said Jack Stanborough, retired regional supervising coroner for Western Ontario. The who, where, when, how is for the cause of death, and then the why would be called the manner of death. And there's 5 manners of death, he said, of the coroner's process. There's accident, homicide, suicide, natural, and undetermined. Undetermined means there's competing interests. Niagara Region and Hamilton Police Services have both said foul play is not suspected, a determination that has left Adamson's family dissatisfied. They feel Adamson was not a victim of misfortune, misadventure, or suicide. Police have not officially closed the case, however. A foul play not suspected conclusion, Stanborough said, indicates that we have no credible evidence he was harmed. it does not mean the police have not given that a tremendous amount of consideration. In fact, most police investigations, in my experience, would show that this guy was murdered until proven otherwise, he said. The reality is most people in this line of work are not naive to the possibility of a homicide and are alert to it. Starborough said on the flip side, if remains do not have obvious signs pointing to a specific cause of death, coroners are likely to provide an undetermined designation. That means the case remains open for more information to come forward, or if other remains are found, to shed light on the cause of death. As a regional coroner, I would not close the matter of death until I am comfortable with the outcome, he said. When you make the manner of death undetermined, you say to the public and to the family, I don't know exactly what happened here or why it played out this way. I don't know if it's likely to be a homicide, suicide, or an accident, or a natural death. All of it is possible, and until I get more information, the only thing I can say is all options are still on the table. Coroners must consider several factors and account for probability when concluding a cause of death. Stanborough said if the cause of death is unclear and some factors are not present, such as in the Adamson case, it can make determining the cause of death difficult. Could it have been an accident? Yeah, but we can't decide on the balance of probability, he said. So I may call it undetermined, but when you find human remains, then it becomes more challenging. In a situation where remains are located, Stanborough said, independent investigations from police, forensic anthropologists, and the lead coroner must come together to conclude, through a preponderance of evidence, what most likely happened. Understanding the findings in the report can take weeks or months, he said. The only people who are allowed to get that report is first-degree relatives or the family. The Adamson family has requested the coroner's report outlining findings from the investigation into the discovery of the arm bone. Anderson's mother, Jennifer, said she has corresponded with the coroner about her son's case. In an email, the coroner wrote to her that, we still have Nicholas as an open case, but they may still give you access to the report, she said. The reports are not sent out automatically, but the coroner's office will provide access to the coroner's report and the autopsy report if requested by the family. Adamson said she is skeptical anything will be gleaned from the coroner's report, as an arm bone isn't going to tell you much about somebody's death. They can't rule homicide out, but they don't know until other information or another part of his body might determine something. But that might never, ever happen, she said. Erie shoreline caked in ice as winds whip up waves. A strong cold front moving across southern Ontario, packing wind gusts of 110 kilometers per hour, knocked power out for roughly 1,200 people along the north shore of Lake Erie Monday. On its website, Canadian Niagara Power said as of 3:30 p.m., its crews were working to restore power to less than 500 customers in Fort Erie and approximately 30 customers in Port Colborne. Niagara-on-the-Lake Hydro said its crews responded to an outage affecting about 114 customers in the Concession 2 and Queenston Village area due to a large pine tree on the lines. Niagara Peninsula Energy Incorporated also reported an outage in North Niagara Falls. Environment and Climate Change Canada had issued a wind warning for Niagara and said strong southwesterly winds could produce gusts of 90 to 110 kilometers per hour. It warned of possible power outages, damage to roofs, fences and soft shelters, and a risk of injury due to flying or falling debris. In Port Colborne, an Environment Canada monitoring station showed Lake Erie rising just more than 2 meters before noon, bringing it above a flooding threshold. By 4:30, the water levels dropped nearly a meter from the earlier reading. Town of Fort Erie blocked Ridgeway Road, Crystal Beach Drive at Lake Avenue, and Terrace Lane to keep people safe. Crystal Beach Waterfront Park, a popular spot to watch storms on the lake, was closed. Point Albino Road from Erie Road south to the dead end was also closed. Fort Erie work crews also blocked access to Lakeshore Road from Bardole Avenue to Old Fort Erie and all side street feeding onto Lake Shore. Access to Niagara Parkway and side streets leading to it from the fort north to Queen Street were also blocked. Central Avenue leading to the parkway was shut down. Waves breached the break wall along the parkway, causing large grass areas and 2 parking lots used to access the waterfront and nearby trails to become flooded. The road was flooded near Mather Arch as well. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Incendiary devices likely cause of downtown St. Catharines fires. Former restaurant and again Standard Building set ablaze. 2 overnight fires in downtown St. Catharines, including one at the former St. Catharines Standard Building, were likely started by incendiary devices, says Fire Chief Dave Upper. We are doing our due diligence and will be investigating. While we don't know the circumstances and can't comment to that effect, we do know some form of combustible fuel source was used to ignite the fires because of the nature of them, Upper said on Saturday. Upper said the fire service has requested assistance from the Niagara Regional Police Arson Task Force to look into the cause of both blazes. St. Catharines Fire Services firefighters responded to 9 Queen Street at 7 p.m. Friday for a reported structure fire. The 173-year-old building, most recently home to La Scala Ristorante, is on the east side of the former newspaper office and backs onto May Alley. When crews arrived, they had a working fire, and we knew the building had some structural integrity issues, Upper said. In the aftermath of the early December fire, which destroyed the former newspaper building, fire officials found the northern wall at 9 Queen Street had collapsed. They believe it fell in an unrelated event at some point prior to the Standard fire, and said it was leaning against 17 Queen Street. Upper said with flames coming through the roof of the former restaurant, firefighters set up for a defensive attack. An aerial truck on Queen Street and another on William Street poured water on the roof. 3 St. Catharines pumper trucks were also on scene, but 2 were released so they could respond elsewhere in the city if needed. Upper said the fire was inside the attic space of the structure, which made it difficult to access. We had a partial roof collapse, similar to what we saw at the Standard Building, where we had to bring in heavy equipment and pull the building apart to get to the seat of the fire and put out the hot spots. Pulling apart the building was expedited with heavy equipment from St. Catharines-based Starnino Environmental Recovery, working next door at the Standard Building. Firefighters were able to extinguish the blaze and secured the scene, clearing at about 1 a.m. Saturday. We're going to hold the building until Monday morning, and our team is going to come in and do an investigation. Upper said the office of the fire marshal declined a request to investigate the fires after seeing photos showing the collapse of 9 Queen Street and the fire at 17 Queen. They said that with the amount of damage that's been done, they would be unable to determine the origin, even if they found an incendiary device in a specific area. An hour after extinguishing the La Scala fire, firefighters were called back to the area for a reported blaze at the Standard Building, currently fenced off as demolition continues following the major fire on December 5th. A fire was discovered on the 3rd floor of the remaining portions of the building, and crews remained on scene throughout the night and into Saturday dealing with hotspots with the support of Starnino's heavy equipment. Upper said firefighters faced challenges due to the weather, but municipal work crews spread salt to keep them and the equipment safe. Crews worked through some challenging conditions with the extreme weather and ice on Friday night and did an excellent job containing the fire. The chief said he'd be contacting the property manager. Both buildings were purchased by Primo Investments Limited in 2016 to determine whether Starnino should begin fully demolishing the La Scala building. They have security, so we're going to request security remains on site 24 hours a day. Upper put the loss of the La Scala building at about $1.5 million. A 2024 St. Catharines Museum blog post said a house was built on the 9 Queen Street site between 1852 and 1854, with a single-story addition on the south side added about 1870. It said the house had several notable residents in its first few decades and was especially linked to the city's medical and grocery histories. Over the decades, part of it was rented to Dr. Samuel McCoy, and it was then taken over in around 1905 by Dr. Matthew James Mullock, who stuck around for about 26 years. After 1931, the Museum Post said it ceased to be a private residence and began a long, chameleonic history of housing numerous businesses. Those businesses included a medical office, home to insurance brokers, barristers, real estate agencies, a wheel trucking company, a camera shop, and an architectural firm. La Scala Ristorante took the building over in 2014 after 9 months of renovations and operated until 2018, when the then building owner said it was needed for other uses. The St. Catharines Standard called 17 Queen Street a 41 square meter building home from 1898 to 2013, when it moved out and its owner sold the building. Various plans for the 0.7 hectare property were floated, including demolishing the structure to build student housing. Before that happened, the property changed hands again in 2016 when it was acquired by Primo Investments Limited and remained vacant. From the opinion section, here's a column titled, "Canadians Want This on the Agenda." Here's my New Year's list, not for the best or the worst of 2025, but for the issue most consistently ignored, despite the fact that people care about it. I'll come back to my list in a minute. First, I want to draw attention to the word sentient. The Oxford English Dictionary says that it means able to perceive or feel things. Animals are often described as sentient beings, meaning that they're aware of their surroundings and able to feel a pinprick. But their consciousness goes much further. Of course, animals can't compose a symphony, write a sonnet, or solve a math equation, talents that only humans possess. On the other hand, animals have none of the cruelty that tarnishes human behavior. They don't torture others for pleasure, as some humans do. No pig or cow has ever sunk to the depths of cruelty or depravity routinely exhibited by, for instance, U.S. President Donald Trump. Animals are capable of experiencing a range of powerful human-like emotions. Indeed, they share some of the finest aspects of human behavior: the capacity for love, loyalty, grief, sadness, joy. The intense joy exhibited by cows and pigs after their liberation from captivity has been filmed, and it is an exhilarating spectacle to watch. Which brings us back to my list of consistently ignored issues, topped by the miserable, pain-filled lives that hundreds of millions of sentient beings endure each year on Canadian factory farms. Long gone is the traditional family farm, where animals grazed in open fields. Today's animals are warehoused in massive industrial buildings, where they're subjected to painful procedures, like chickens having their beaks cut off, with cows and pigs often confined to tiny spaces for months on end, sometimes in cages too small for them to even turn around. What makes this cruel reality so striking is that polls show that Canadians, by significant margins, want tougher regulations to protect animals on these farms, even if it costs more. So what's the problem? We live in a democracy, yet no major political party ever picks up this issue in earnest. This brings us to another revealing comparison between animal and human behavior. Animals lack the human capacity to create political systems that appear democratic, but fail to deliver results favored by the majority when those results conflict with corporate interests. Indeed, our political system is particularly deficient in this regard, at least when it comes to animals. The European Union has far superior laws protecting animals in industrial farming. Even in the United States, where federal laws are weak, a number of individual states have strong animal protections because of popular support for ballot measures that the U.S. political system allows. Canada provides for no such measures and relies on elected governments, which are notoriously weak in standing up to corporate lobbies. As a result, Canadian factory farms are almost completely unregulated, except by codes of practice, which are written by the industry itself, creating surely the best example ever of the fox literally guarding the henhouse. Premier Doug Ford has been particularly hostile to imposing animal protection regulations on agribusiness, or even allowing the public a glimpse of what goes on inside places of animal torment. In 2020, the Ford government passed tough legislation banning undercover reporting at factory farms and slaughterhouses. When the group Animal Justice won a court victory against the legislation in 2024, the Ford government appealed this rare victory for helpless animals. The case is pending. And so it is that each year we consistently ignore the endless suffering of hundreds of millions of lovely creatures who never displayed the cruelty humans are capable of, yet have the same capacity we do to experience the raptures of love and joy. This is a letter to the paper titled Jail Time Needed for Beating Dog. Ray, the man who beat a service dog, banned from having animals for next decade, December 24th. The stained glass window nativity scene that adorned the front page of the newspaper was beautiful and uplifting. The next page's story was horrific. A 35-year-old drunk man showed disrespect for a female police officer. He repeatedly punched her in the face and injured her tooth, shoulder, and more. He disobeyed the officer and refused to release a minuscule Yorkie dog. I hope every person who has the duty of assigning service dogs to owners does their due diligence to determine who the dog is destined to be with. One can only guess the life that poor Yorkie experienced with this guy. The dog must have been severely injured, as the vet bill was $5,000. I wonder what lifelong side effects that innocent soul will have to live with. The judge expects the abuser to pay the vet. I would be shocked. Premier Doug Ford has been talking about getting harder on crime. Here's a case that screams for jail time. Instead, this man will do house arrest and in 10 years can get another animal. I do not understand how he was let off so lightly. Also from the letters section, here's one titled City's Aspirational Newsletter. There were many positive ideas put out in the city's most recent Garden City Current newsletter. I was particularly pleased Old Lock 1 Commons was chosen as the name for where that lock once stood in Port Dalhousie. The fitting name was suggested by the late, much-respected Councilor Carlos Garcia, a heritage advocate, and people voted for it too. Good choice. Then the idea of celebrating St. Catherine's 150 years as a city by naming a poet laureate for a year is inspiring. I have no doubt a suitable individual will be found, as there are many talented and creative people among us. The honorary street naming idea for significant individuals, institutions, or organizations who have contributed much to the city is another fine idea. For years, the Lou Cahill Way, near the Central Library, honors one of the best citizens this city ever had. Aside from the newsletter, one reads the Municipal Development Corporation will add 4 citizen appointees to the board and will help redevelop unused city-owned buildings downtown. In addition, the city recently added a significant amount to the annual budget for the Cultural Investment Program for 2026. While much of the above ideas for the city are aspirational, this is welcome news at the end of a difficult year for many. Citizens and businesses in the West End are thankful local outfit Rankin Construction finished the St. Paul Street Railway Bridge a year ahead of time. Signed, Gail Benjafield, St. Catherine's. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Moving to the Arts and Life section, here's an article titled The Year That Wasn't Markle's. Duchess of Sussex had projects lined up to make her the shining star of 2025. It didn't work. On January 1st, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, marked her return to Instagram by posting a video of herself tracing 2025 in the wet sand of a California beach. A half-decade after she and Prince Harry famously abandoned the strictures of life in the royal family for the freedom of Montecito, this was supposed to be the year when all her hard work paid off. The day after that barefoot romp on the beach, the trailer dropped for her Netflix lifestyle series, With Love, Meghan. Then came the announcement of her renamed brand, As Ever, to be produced in collaboration with Netflix. A week after the show premiered, she announced the launch of her podcast, Confessions of a Female Founder with Meghan. All the ingredients for Meghan becoming a worldwide hit were there. A beautiful, ambitious woman fronting a rapid succession of projects designed to keep her in the public eye from January to December. She could build her personal brand into a vision of someone who delivers what Americans want, in that contradictory, royal-loving yet Republican way. A down-to-earth duchess turned entrepreneur, able to shill flower sprinkles and candles as successfully as she can confidently saunter down red carpets and chat with world leaders. The strategy didn't work. It wasn't an abject failure or a scandalous catastrophe, but the year of Meghan slowly deflated as each project failed to deliver as expected. She's ending the year with more than 4 million followers on Instagram, but no true successes. There's no sign of a second season for her podcast. Netflix has not officially renewed her show on the eve of its one-off holiday special. It also ended the exclusive and very lucrative 5-year deal with the Sussexes, instead opting for a frugal first peak deal. As of now, no new projects have been greenlit. Her as-ever homeware site has just 15 items for sale, ranging from $12 US raspberry spread to a $35 Sauvignon Blanc, to customers only in the continental United States. There are reports the items may not be stocked on Netflix's brick-and-mortar stores. Meghan is still standing on third base. She's still famous, she's still rich, and she's still married to the fifth in line to the throne. She, Harry, and her children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, still live in a mansion on a palatial estate in Southern California. They still have friends who lend out their private planes, as well as brownstones in New York. The entertainment industry loves a comeback. After all, Hollywood has a lower batting average than most Major League Baseball players. But the 44-year-old has to analyze what happened in 2025 and figure out how not to repeat those mistakes. She and Harry continue to burn through ComStaff. Their 10th, a former Netflix executive, lasted only 4 months before leaving this autumn. The pile of forgotten projects is large, such as those never-repeated quasi-royal tours that she and Harry undertook to Nigeria and Colombia in 2024. She's got all the advantages. She landed in Hollywood in 2020 as a major international figure. But she has evolved into a bad celebrity because she doesn't understand her role in the culture. Meghan could be famous by being open and real. It worked for the Kardashians, who got rich by working non-stop to sell themselves to a world eager to see their latest reinventions. Gwyneth Paltrow transformed herself from an Oscar-winning actress into a successful entrepreneur by slowly, carefully building up her Goop brand. Her lifestyle newsletters are weekly and witty, and the more than 500 episodes of her Goop podcast have attracted a devoted following. By contrast, Meghan is a flitter. She activated and then deleted a Shop My Page this year. She completed only 12 podcast episodes on Spotify and 9 on Lemonada. A Spotify executive called her a grifter. She launched her brand as American Riviera Orchid, complete with a soft-focus video of her gliding through her mansion in an evening gown, only to switch to As Ever when she couldn't secure the trademark. After her estranged father was admitted to a hospital in the Philippines, her side repeatedly changed their story of how they were trying to contact him. Though Season 1 ratings for her lifestyle series weren't great, it was number 383 on Netflix's list of shows for the first half of 2025, she did only one big interview to promote Season 2. The 53-minute video with Emily Chang of Bloomberg landed on the same day as the new episodes, and was so packed with gossipy tidbits about family, fashions, and Meghan's future that the media immediately swung their focus to it and away from the bland, repetitive kitchen scenes that featured far too many flower sprinkles. If Meghan doesn't want to let it all hang out, then she could go the dignified and controlled celebrity route. Those stars do their jobs and don't seek out attention. Their sheer elusiveness enhances their popularity. They don't repeatedly appear in magazines and on podcasts when they're not truly promoting anything but themselves. Ironically, the most famous proponent of this strategy is the Duchess of Sussex's sister-in-law, Kate, Princess of Wales. She's done one fashion shoot for UK Vogue's 100th anniversary. That was in 2016. There are signs that time is running out for another relaunch. The Meghan Moment was Variety's cover line in October 2022. 3 years later, Harper's Bazaar added a possessive to the title of its cover article, Meghan's Moment. 2 years after leaving royal life, she was ready for her next act, according to The Cut in 2022. 3 years later, she was ready to author her own next chapter, said Harper's in 2025. Given that she's taken part in an exhaustive Netflix series about leaving the royal family, as well as countless interviews and podcasts since 2020, it's hard to see why she's only now taking control of her life. Meghan wants everyone to know and acknowledge that she's royal, without the obligations of working on behalf of the monarch, including all those endless engagements for worthy causes. Toward the end of 2025, we learned that a house manager, aka an American butler, formally introduced her to a reporter in an empty mansion as Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. That title is ubiquitous on her commercial ventures. There's a scene in With Love, Meghan where she curtly corrects Mindy Kaling, who called her Meghan Markle. Her royal monogram, a cursive M under a crown, adorns her notebook in an Instagram post selling products. As for Prince Harry, he's done little this year, aside from attending his biannual Invictus Games in British Columbia. On December 1st, he transformed himself into a rent-a-prince for an Ontario Real Estate Association conference. 4 days later, he gave a speech to a business crowd in Santa Monica. His appearances have been overshadowed by his glamorous wife's headline-grabbing moves. If he thought he was the spare in Britain, he's now the double spare. Meanwhile, the couple marked the 6th anniversary of their decision to jettison their royal lives in January. After a disappointing 2025, it's far from clear how they will finance their expensive lifestyle for the long term. Perhaps another relaunch? Return of the Duchess has a nice ring to it. Let's look at the horoscope section. Overall, there's a melancholy mood permeating the air, which isn't at all uncommon during this time of year. However, since the current cosmic weather forecasts a gloomy day ahead, we may find the need to work extra hard not to ruminate on what's in the past or get stuck on negative thoughts. Relying on the love and support of our friends and family can be one way to combat the dreary vibes for today. Engaging in self-care activities like meditation, crafting, or talk therapy might also be useful for chasing away the clouds. Meanwhile, helping people in need can lift our spirits. For Aries, March 21st to April 19th, you may not be feeling very optimistic today. Seek out encouraging advice from your elders or comfort from those who love you. Practice gratitude for what you have. For Taurus, April 20th to May 20th, instead of taking the do-it-yourself approach, embrace the power of community. Gemini, May 21st to June 20th, you might have to put everyone else on hold for today so that you can make the time to do what's necessary to take care of yourself. For Cancer, June 21 to July 22nd, don't quit before you even get started. Sometimes all you need to do is just try. Leo, July 23rd to August 22nd. It might feel like you're missing out on the fun today. However, you're probably not missing out on much at all. It's all about perspective. Virgo, August 23rd to September 22nd. Be mindful of pushing people away. Allow yourself to let them in. Libra, September 23rd to October 22nd. Instead of focusing on what doesn't work, try and focus on what does work. Keep it positive. Scorpio, October 23rd to November 21. Being open to learning and growing will help keep you from getting stuck in place. Sagittarius, November 22nd to December 21st. Watch out for negative self-talk. Be kind to yourself. Capricorn, December 22nd to January 19th. If your mind is heavy, talk to someone who can listen and help. Aquarius, January 20th to February 18th. Don't compare yourself to others. You know what's right for you. Keep doing it. And for Pisces, February 19th to March 20th. A problem may seem insurmountable, but your resourcefulness will help you find a solution. Here's an advice column. Lisa Tesher is an advice columnist for The Star and based in Toronto. You can send her relationship questions via email, lisi@thestar.ca. Question comes to her: how can I help a friend being loved bombed? A friend of mine who lost her husband not too long ago has quite suddenly become pursued by an individual who swears she's the sexiest, most intelligent, and most glamorous person he's ever met. After a very short period of dating, he's already suggested he move into her place. He also wants to listen in on her phone calls, and she has given him access to her financial dealings. Relatives are suggesting she's being love bombed, and from what I've read about this technique, it sounds like trouble ahead. How can someone in this situation be helped? Signed, Senior Scam. The answer? Your friend should not allow this person to move in, now or ever. On your details alone, this new relationship has red flags waving strong. You, any of her other friends, and her relatives need to have an intervention with this woman. Does she have any children? I am certain they will not be happy when they learn that this new person has access to their mother's finances. I strongly suggest someone call her lawyer if she has one, and her bank. A high-level manager will hear the alarm bells you are sharing and freeze her accounts or keep an eye out for inconsistent activity. She may still be in shock from the loss of her husband. She may be swept off her feet by this new person, or a combination of the two. It may be a struggle to get her to see the light, but I would risk my friendship for that. The year is coming to an end, and so too is my life as I know it. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a new letter that starts off. The year is coming to an end, and so too is my life as I know it. I'm getting old. I can feel it in everything I do and every time I look in the mirror. I can't sleep anymore, so I'm exhausted all the time. I feel like my grandmother. She used to be up at dawn baking, and then she'd watch all the late-night TV shows. I could never figure out why she didn't sleep. And my other grandmother barely remembered anything. She'd leave the phone in the fridge and the TV remote in her bed. She was always calling items, what do you call it? And I can't remember names for things now either. But I'm much younger than they were. What is going on? Signed, Old Before My Time. The response? You mentioned several symptoms which are some of the major signs you are perhaps going through menopause. I strongly suggest you start recording your cycle if you don't already. If your period is irregular for 3 months in a row, that's a sign that you're starting perimenopause. Once you haven't had a period for a full year, you are officially in menopause. Sleep disruption, brain fog, joint pain, weight gain, skin and hair texture changes all point to a shift in your hormone levels. It would behoove you to make an appointment with your doctor and ask to check your levels. The average age for women to start going through menopause is 45, but that can vary greatly due to many factors. So don't hang your hat on your age, just go get checked out. But your life is not over, and there is life after menopause. Once you figure it all out with your doctor, you can and will have restful nights with plenty of sleep, and you can manage your weight and fitness levels. Finding the right products for your skin and hair can help you get back that glow. Don't give up on yourself. Be proactive and figure out what's going on inside that's affecting you on the outside. Feedback regarding a letter that was titled Smokin' Hot in September. Reader 1 says, I thought of a reason the woman doesn't move and has facial contortions. Perhaps sex is painful. Perhaps she has endometriosis or another physical problem. If she's inexperienced, she may not know that sex isn't supposed to hurt, and her face is showing pain. She may not enjoy it, but wants to please and connect with her partner. Reader 2 says, consideration should be given as to whether she has had bad or unwanted previous sexual experience, to whatever degree of seriousness, that overshadows consensual sex now. Or perhaps it has something to do with his ability to ensure she is properly stimulated. I am 70 years young and have been lucky to have had sexual partners that knew how to give, as well as how to receive. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This is a story titled, PM's Policy Shift Prompts Human Rights Questions. As Prime Minister Mark Carney puts trade and security at the center of Canada's foreign policy, observers say Ottawa is also shifting how it asserts its values on the world stage. The Liberals insist they are still standing up for human rights globally, while seeking investment from China, India, and Gulf countries. But a change in priorities is prompting some criticism, and changing how Canada trains its diplomats. They won't say out loud that we're going to be less interested in values, but clearly that seems to be the case, said University of Ottawa professor Stephen Brown. Last month, Carney told reporters that while Canada no longer has an explicitly feminist foreign policy, his government is still upholding values that include defending LGBTQ+ rights abroad and combating violence against women. Yes, we have that aspect to our foreign policy, but I wouldn't describe our foreign policy as feminist foreign policy, Carney said during the G20 summit in Johannesburg. His comments came after mounting criticism from human rights advocates on other themes, such as Carney courting investment from the United Arab Emirates, amid widespread allegations that that country is fueling ethnic violence in Sudan. Former Foreign Affairs Minister Lloyd Axworthy has accused Carney of taking a bootlicking approach to U.S. President Donald Trump by muting a focus on Canadian values in order to try to salvage trade access. Axworthy has criticized the government for being part of a breakdown of collective courage globally. For him, that includes not calling out the U.S. for sanctioning members of the International Court of Justice, including a Canadian. Axworthy also laments that Ottawa is not mounting a robust campaign to stop countries from exiting the Ottawa Treaty that Axworthy had brokered to prevent the use of landmines. In November's budget, the government signaled it would scale down funding for global health initiatives, where Canada's contribution has grown disproportionately relative to other similar economies. Brown, whose research focuses on foreign aid, said that effectively means we were being leaders and we don't want to be leaders anymore. He said Canada is increasingly seen by its peers as placating the Trump administration, instead of asserting its own vision of human rights and international law. Reputation is a currency, and it can count for a lot in international negotiations, Brown said. If people just see Canada as too afraid to disagree with the Trumpled United States, if Canada won't stand up for Canadians abroad, then Canada can be seen as a pushover, and that weakens us on the international level. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand has insisted that Canada is still advancing human rights, which she outlined as a third pillar of Canada's foreign policy alongside economic security and defense, in her inaugural United Nations speech as Canada's top diplomat. She told the House Foreign Affairs Committee on November 27th that shifting geopolitics required Canada to change how it talks about values. We are going to make sure that our commitments to gender equality, human rights, women and girls will continue in a way that recognizes the new geopolitical and fiscal context, both of which demand a different frame, she testified. That new frame seems to have changes regarding how Global Affairs Canada trains its diplomats. Stephen Nagy, a Canadian who works as a politics professor at the International Christian University in Tokyo, has been commissioned by GAC at various points to train diplomats. In his recent Indo-Pacific Regional Security course, Nagy said the government didn't ask him to touch on gender and identity issues, despite this being part of the scope in previous years. That tells me a lot about the direction, he said. If these were priorities, that course would have had at least 2 hours on it. But it went through multiple layers of the bureaucracy, and they didn't ask for inclusion of any of those issues. Nagy, who is a senior fellow with the Asia Pacific Foundation, said the Trudeau government had put environmental, labor, and gender issues at the forefront of its engagement across Asian countries who wanted to instead emphasize trade, security, and supply chains. Whether it was Beijing or Tokyo, Seoul, Singapore, or Hanoi, the values-based approach to Canadian diplomacy in the region was by and large seen as schizophrenic at best, and completely misguided at worst, he said. He said it is sensitive in many Asian cultures to raise LGBTQ+ rights, with the exception of Taiwan. At a November 2017 summit in Vietnam, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau infamously skipped a meeting aimed at launching a trade deal that had been termed the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and later agreed to join the pact after the words comprehensive and progressive were added. People still bring it up, which is shocking to me, he said. Brown said Canada's feminist foreign policy was a major part of how the Trudeau government was seen on global issues, along with a focus on human rights. But he argues Ottawa lacked coherence in advancing those issues. He said trade agreements touched on these issues in a non-enforceable way, with language that might nudge countries to do more, but without actual repercussions for not doing so. On aid, Ottawa had specific targets for women benefiting from development spending and peacekeeping training funded by Canada. In diplomacy, there were informal efforts to boost the number of women in senior postings. But Brown said the policy didn't aim to structurally change how aid, the military, or diplomacy shape women's lives. They didn't transform the core in any way, he said. To me, they all seem pretty ad hoc, and often at the margins of what was really going on in those various departments and programs. Under Carney, Ottawa is still trying to advance gender equality, but with an economic focus. Nagy said the economics framing is a smart way to have an impact by just slightly tweaking the expressions of a human rights policy, instead of being seen as advancing issues that might be controversial in certain countries. We need new formulas of trying to achieve those human rights objectives, which are really, really critical to human development. Nagy said the Trudeau government was still seen as a valuable partner in Asia for its work in areas like detecting vehicles that are trying to evade radar detection, for fishing, or evading sanctions. Wintry weather slams eastern Canada. A winter storm brought freezing rain, blowing snow, and strong winds across eastern Canada on Monday, leading to a surge of 911 calls in Montreal and leaving tens of thousands of customers without power in Ontario. Montreal area ambulance service Urgence Santé said that for a period on Monday morning, it received some 100 calls per hour, many for people who had fallen and hurt themselves on ice-coated sidewalks. Spokesperson Valérie Guertin urged people to stay home if possible, and if they had to go outside, she advised them to wear crampons and adapt their driving to the weather. Ambulance requests are mostly for falls on the ice, traumatic injuries, or people with injuries following a fall, she said in a phone interview. By afternoon, another spokesperson, Alexandre Sapone, said the call volume had dropped slightly to between 60 and 70 calls per hour, compared to between 40 and 50 in normal times. Sapone said that in addition to a rise in 911 calls, crews were facing challenges around loading people safely onto ambulances, sometimes requiring paramedics to clear entrances of snow and ice and spread salt or other abrasives on the road. Much of southern and western Quebec were under weather alerts for prolonged periods of freezing rain with ice pellets, and while most of those alerts had been lifted by late afternoon, some areas remained under wind warnings, including Montreal, where gusts of up to 90 kilometers per hour were expected. Vast swaths of the province were also under winter storm warnings, with regions such as Saguenay, Lac Saint Jean, and Lower St. Lawrence expecting some 20 to 30 centimeters of snow, along with strong winds. More than 20,500 Hydro-Quebec clients were without power as of 3:30 p.m., including some 12,000 homes and businesses in the Laurentians area north of Montreal. In Ontario, more than 47,000 Hydro One customers were without power, down from 61,000 earlier in the day. Meteorologist Eric Tomlinson said the precipitation had largely shifted to regular rain by late morning in Montreal, leaving behind 5 to 10 millimeters of ice, but that freezing rain continued to fall north of the city. He warned that the temperature was expected to drop sharply during the night, which could once again turn surfaces slippery. There were some flight delays and cancellations reported at Montreal Trudeau International Airport, and Air Canada asked customers to check their flight status before leaving home. Tens of thousands of Ontarians remain without power, after blasts of heavy snow, freezing rain, and strong winds hit a swath of the province. The Hydro One outage map shows that more than 45,000 customers were in the dark as of late Monday afternoon, down from about 61,000 earlier in the day. The province's largest electricity utility says that the outages were due to the storm that has downed power lines. Environment Canada said most of Ontario could expect a mixed bag of precipitation ranging from freezing rain in Ottawa to heavy snow along Lake Superior and up to 60 centimeters in Timmins. Multiple stretches of highways in the Timmins area and other parts of northern Ontario were closed on Monday morning. Strong wind gusts of up to 90 kilometers per hour were expected in the Greater Toronto Area and southwestern Ontario, with the forecast warning of power outages and possible damage to buildings and trees. From the business section, here's a short piece titled, "Founder Calls for Changes at Lululemon." Chip Wilson has launched a proxy fight at Lululemon Athletica Inc. as he seeks changes in leadership and strategy at the company he founded. Wilson said in a statement Monday he has nominated 3 director candidates for Lululemon's board who will help redefine the company and its next chapter. Lululemon needs visionary creative leadership to thrive. The simple truth is that the current board lacks these skills. The nominations come after the company announced earlier this month current CEO Calvin McDonald would step down from his role effective January 31st, with the search for a new leader underway. McDonald had been at the helm of Vancouver-based Lululemon for 7 years and will serve as a senior advisor through March 31st of next year. Wilson, who remains a large shareholder in the company, said the CEO change was a third, total failure of board oversight, with no clear succession plan in place. He has said the search for a replacement should be led by new, independent directors. His 3 candidates for the board include Mark Maurer, former co-chief executive of On Holding AG, Laura Gentile, former chief marketing officer of ESPN, and Eric Hirschberg, former chief executive officer of Activision. Meanwhile, activist investor Elliott Management has built a stake of more than $1 billion in Lululemon and is pushing for the struggling retailer to name former Ralph Lauren executive Jane Nielsen as its next chief executive. Lululemon did not immediately respond to a request for comment. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from current issue of the Niagara Falls Review. We read from the Niagara Falls Review every Sunday at 6 p.m. Your reader has been Jim Michaely. Thank you for listening.